Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a lovely week so far. The sun is shining again here in London, which we always love to see. Today I wanted to talk to you about how to exit a fat loss phase. I think the main reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I think it's an aspect of any body composition journey that is majorly overlooked and underrated in terms of its importance. And it could be argued that the fat loss phase in and of itself isn't necessarily the hard part. It can be almost easy to stick to something for a finite amount of time if you know there's going to be a result at the end of it that you're going to be really happy with. But I think people often don't think enough about what happens after. How do you know that you can maintain the results that you've worked so hard for? So if you've just finished a diet phase or you're close to it, and you're wondering, what do I do now? This video is going to be for you. So I'm going to break down how to exit a fat loss phase without rebounding, step by step. We're going to cover how to estimate your maintenance, track against that maintenance, find your range for maintaining, and eventually letting go of tracking without backsliding. So step one is going to be about estimating your new maintenance calories. In an ideal world, you will want an end date to your deficit. You should know when you're at your goal or close to your goal from your progress markers. So things like your progress pictures, maybe you had a kind of goal weight loss in mind and you're close to that, and you're probably starting to feel some of the effects of that diet creeping in. Maybe you're feeling a little more fatigued. You're noticing that your adherence is becoming more and more difficult. All of these are signs that it's probably time to exit to maintenance, at least initially. So when it comes to figuring out where you want to test your maintenance at first, this is going to be an educated estimate. Now, there are a few ways you can do this. You can either just use a TDEE calculator, just Google that term, thousands will pop up, and they're all pretty much the same. You'll type in information such as your height, your weight, your age, your current activity levels, and it will spit out a number that it estimates is roughly your maintenance calories. Equally, if you're working with a coach, they should be able to give you an informed estimate around what your maintenance would be, again, based on how your deficit went, how much weight you lost, the rate at which you were losing weight on your deficit calories, and your general lifestyle and energy expenditure. Whatever that number is, that is your current start point for testing our maintenance. Now, I think the thing that we see most commonly is people will get to their end date of their diet and go, great, now I just live my life as normal. Do whatever I like, throw all structure out the window. That is a surefire way to get you backsliding towards where you were before. We still need strategy at maintenance. Initially, you'll start with a bit more structure and you'll gradually move towards a more flexible, intuitive approach. So once you've got that maintenance calorie in mind, you're going to need to track against that. I personally don't recommend stepping away from tracking altogether the minute you finish your deficit. So continue to track. Wherever possible, keep some of those fat loss habits in place. Regular meals, high protein, high fiber, just a little more food. So you're going to take that calorie number and you're going to track against it for 10 days to 2 weeks. Now, to be clear, what will happen is initially you will see an uptick on the scale. At this point, do not panic. This doesn't necessarily mean that you've overshot it and are now in a surplus. The scale will come up because you have more food in your system. You're probably eating a few more carbs. That is all going to weigh something in terms of water retention and just general body mass. So what you're going to be looking for is the trend over time. For that kind of 2-week period, you're wanting to see what happens to the scale in terms of its trajectory. You're ideally looking for a wiggly, it will always be wiggly, but horizontally trending line. If your scale looks a little bit like this, you can safely assume you are at maintenance. If it is scaling up, you're probably in a surplus, and if it's scaling down, you're probably in a deficit still. So I would use that process as long as you need to find where your kind of sweet spot is, where you're seeing that horizontal trend over the course of a few weeks, not what happens day to day. Once you've got that nailed and you know at X amount of calories I am roughly maintaining, then it is time to find your maintenance range. So again, this is something that I think is often misunderstood, understandably, particularly when you exit a fat loss phase. The last thing you want is to put all the weight back on that you lost. So people tend to think, okay, well, I know my maintenance calories are 2,000. So if I was to eat 2,100 over the course of a few weeks, my weight's going to go up. Not necessarily. This is where maintenance range comes in and why it's something that is so important to understand. So you as a human being will likely be able to maintain your current body composition on a range of calories. And this can actually be fairly significant. The data tells us that it's likely somewhere between 200 and 500 calories. And this makes sense because no one day is exactly the same as the other. You're going to have some days where you are much more active, some days where you sit on the sofa and do nothing. All of that is going to impact your overall energy balance. So I like to start this by adding in a couple of higher calorie days. Again, we're still tracking at this point. Maybe you could aim for a day at the weekend where you eat 2,300, and then during the weekdays you eat 2,000. Maybe you know you've got a particularly intense day on a Tuesday. You have a gym session followed by a day in the office where you're walking a lot, and then maybe you're going for a cycle after work with your friend. You know that day is going to require more energy. So play around. Have one of those days where calories are slightly higher to see how your body responds. This kind of flexibility teaches you that maintenance is not that one rigid number. And your body can absolutely handle some fluctuation without just gaining fat. So as an example, in an ideal world, as a result of that maintenance testing, you'd be able to figure out that you could eat somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 calories on any given day, depending on your energy needs. And this is where it's really important to just listen in to what your body is asking for. It is highly unlikely that you're going to gain body fat by simply honoring true physical, unemotional hunger. And on the other end of that scale, stopping when you are satisfied. Provided that you have a predominantly whole food approach to your diet, this is just you responding to what your body is asking you for. It is not a recipe for fat gain. So you've played around with your calories over that couple of weeks, figuring out where your maintenance range likely sits. This is the time for us to introduce a lot more flexibility and for us to think about transitioning to mindful eating. Now, this will include stepping away from tracking. Not all at once, but just a day here, a day there, and then gradually not at all. So the way I like to start this process is using a traffic light system. Thinking about our food as kind of green meals, amber meals, or red meals. So instead of tracking everything to the gram, start thinking about basing your days around maybe 2 or 3 of those green meals. And what I mean by that are meals that are super repeatable for you and easy to eyeball. Things like your morning oats, yogurt, fruits, maybe your classic lunchtime wrap or pitta, smoothies, things where you know by and large you're using the same ingredients each time and similar amounts of each too. If you've got 2 or 3 of those meals dotted throughout your day, you can use these as your foundation. Meals that you feel super confident with, that you know are ticking those boxes of high protein, high fiber, and are relatively calorie balanced. Then we have those amber meals, things that are semi-tracked, where you might have the odd kind of new thing, but they're still portion controlled and pretty repeatable. So with these, we can probably create a plate that looks a little bit like this with some new ingredients that you're not used to eating, particularly during your cut. Maybe your protein source is different. Maybe you're getting fats from somewhere new. But we're still thinking about this type of approach. And then we have our red meals, which are things that you just cannot or should be tracking. Meals out, takeaways, social events. You catch my drift. So adding in a couple of those anchor meals so that you then have a little bit of room for that flexibility. You can add in an amber meal here, a red meal there. This approach means that you're being mindful, you're still making sure that a good portion of your day is spent ticking the boxes that you know make you feel your best and that help you maintain your physique. But you have that room to add in those foods that are more based around flexibility and joy. That traffic light system is something that I will use daily. I don't necessarily categorize it as that in my brain, it's just something I do. And this is exactly the point. We want to think about principles that we can realistically do every single day, that crucially do not feel like restriction. I'd say in my example, I probably have green meals for breakfast, lunch, and my afternoon snack. Now, this for me not only helps with physique maintenance, but it takes all of the thought process out of it. I am very happy to have the same breakfast, lunch, and snack every day of the week. Don't get me wrong, I'll change it up every now and again for some variety, but it just does not bother me to have the same 3 meals that I know I really enjoy most of the time. Then I'll have my amber and red meals when it makes most sense for me, in the evening for dinner, and during the weekends when I'm busy doing social and fun things. So hopefully you can see how that type of structure can really help you to move away from tracking altogether. For the purposes of this video, I hopped on the scales this morning, after not doing so for well over a month, just to show you that physique maintenance, whilst taking that mindful and intuitive approach without tracking, absolutely does work, but only if you have some nutritional principles bedded in, which is exactly what that transition to maintenance should involve. Something else that I think is really important to talk about when it comes to maintenance is I am not saying that you will maintain your post-deficit weight forever and ever. There will inevitably be times where you add a couple of kilos because you've had a week away on holiday, or you're injured and you can't go to the gym, so you sit on the sofa, frankly, for 2 or 3 weeks. Your life priorities will exist on a little bit of a scale. Sometimes your health and fitness will be really important and be right up there in terms of your priority list. Other times, it's going to be, frankly, pretty unimportant. That is okay. Gaining a little bit of weight here or there is something that is likely to happen throughout the course of your life. But really embracing maintenance and making sure that you have those structures and habits baked in means that you know what the difference is between just tightening things up for a couple of weeks to see those scales drop down to your baseline, or finding yourself stuck in a cycle where you are yo-yo dieting forever. So again, maintenance is the most important part of any fat loss journey, and it is the part that most people ignore. I think maybe because it doesn't sell that well. I don't know. Like, it's probably not the most sexy goal you can have. How can you maintain your physique? But crucially, if you don't learn how to do that, then you're just going to be stuck in that dieting cycle, which surely is not where you want to be. So when it comes to knowing you are at maintenance or you have found maintenance, there are lots of things that you're going to want to consider that aren't just what the scale weight says. Although, of course, we want scale weight to be roughly within a couple of kilos. We want progress pictures to look largely the same. We want clothes to fit in a similar way. All of those things are pretty fundamental evidence that maintenance has been found. But there are also a lot of other things that you want to consider when it comes to not only maintenance, but maximizing your maintenance range, i.e., eating as much food as you can whilst maintaining your physique. This list includes, but isn't limited to, sleeping well throughout the night on a regular basis, experiencing low food cravings, no feeling of constant hunger, feeling satisfied after meals, not going to bed hungry, recovering well from workouts, performing well in the gym, having no issues with sex drive, rarely dealing with illness or injury, and having a regular, predictable menstrual cycle. If you are ticking all of these boxes, and you have the data to back up that you're at maintenance in the form of measurements and progress pictures showing you that things are roughly the same, then you can pretty well guarantee that you are in that sweet spot of your maintenance range, where you are maximizing the nutrition you're giving your body so that you can perform at your best. The reason I suggest this 4-step process to finding maintenance rather than the quite popular suggestion of reverse dieting is this. You do not want to spend any longer than is absolutely necessary in a diet. It's a physical and mental stressor. You are literally giving your body less than it needs. In my view, we want to spend as little time as possible in that state. The concept of reverse dieting is more attractive perhaps because there's less likelihood of you overshooting and therefore being in a surplus. The idea behind reverse dieting is that you gradually and incrementally increase your calories by a very small amount week on week. There seems to be a theory behind reverse dieting that somehow it helps you boost your metabolism and that it helps you to put on just lean mass rather than gaining any fat. But the only reason that you would gain any fat in whatever maintenance method you take, whether that's straight there or via reverse dieting, is if you eat in a calorie surplus for a sustained period of time. And we've already got that base covered when it comes to tracking and testing our maintenance range. So really, all you're doing when it comes to a reverse diet is prolonging a deficit unnecessarily. So in short, if you want to maintain your results, you need to find ways to maintain the habits that allowed you to get said results, so that you can make sure you have a way of living that allows you to enjoy your life while staying in shape. That, after all, has to be the best fitness goal there is. And it's exactly why I put such an emphasis on maintenance in the Recomp Blueprint. Losing fat is cool, but maintaining fat loss is another ballgame. And it's truly what I think makes the Recomp Blueprint different. Coaching doors are closed for now, and the next intake starts in September. So if you're super keen and you want to get on the priority list, which is where all the early spaces will be released to, you can comment Recomp below and I'll send you the link. As always, fire away with any of your questions. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Okay, love you, bye.